You ever look at artists and think to yourself, oh, they should have stopped years ago, as far as at the height of their...
Yes, I do.
The first record I remember was All Shook Up by Elvis Presley, which gave me an intense feeling of excitement. And then Jerry Lee Lewis, Great Balls of Fire. And then after that, it was the Beatles.
Yeah. Were the 60s important to you? Was the whole Beatles era? I mean, I think you were 11 years old or something, I guess.
The Beatles were important to me because they came from the same kind of background as I did. And they wrote their own songs and they made it.
McCartney's one of the reasons that I had the nerve to try and be a songwriter. He was a working class kid from an English seaport like me, and he and Lennon conquered the world with their own songs. Without that example, an entire generation of British kids wouldn't have even dared or even think about it. So I thank him and John Lennon for giving me the idea that maybe I could try myself.
And before that, making it in music seemed like an impossibility. So the Beatles gave you that idea that you could do it yourself.
No.
But the whole 60s thing I wasn't really involved in because I was too young.
Do you look back upon that period as being anything special, or do you think it's overhyped in the popular imagination?
No, it was an incredibly special time. It was almost as if they rediscovered something. I always imagine Mozart in that period. You know, he rediscovered a whole continent of music that hadn't been walked on before. Yeah. The Beatles did the same. Rock and roll was new.
Yeah.
At least some critics compared Synchronicity to Sgt. Pepper in that they said, here's a major group with huge popularity and critical acceptance that makes this significant departure, this left turn in a much anticipated album, and their audience stays with them and takes the trip with them. Was that praise that was deserved?
I'd never heard this praise before now. I mean, Sgt. Pepper's is one of my favorite albums.
I always wanted to ask you about the idea of songs with a one-line hook. Message of Metal has multiple single-line hooks that are repeated over. The Beatles were masters of this. I want to hold your hand, I want to hold your hand, I want to hold your hand. Let it be, they just repeat the same phrase 4 times.
Yep.
And a lot of the Police hits and a lot of the hits on your solo career would have a repeated hook.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned the Beatles, because the reason I'm a musician is because of the Beatles. They conquered the world with their own songs and therefore gave permission to a younger generation, a decade younger, permission to try the same thing. Oh, we'll try that. I know those 4 chords. I could do that probably, and we all tried. And we all...
Some succeeded.
Oh, some succeeded by the skin of their teeth, but we owe a lot to the Beatles.
The Beatles songs that are, both of you guys, that you think are just incredibly perfect songs.
Don't play Yesterday. No, don't do it. Don't do it. You'll like this. This is Dom's own version of Yesterday.
He's making me do it.
This is classic.
All my trouble seems far away. He just likes it when I go to the major.
Sting, what is a great... Name me like a Beatles song that is you think is
hundreds of them. Blackbird, Penny Lane. You know, McCartney was asked last year, what song do you wish you'd written? And he picked one of mine. And
Fields of Gold, right?
For my reaction, saying, one, I wish I'd written like 100 Paul McCartney songs. And, you know, one of the greatest honors I've had about that song is when McCartney said publicly that this is one of the songs he wished he'd written. Now, I can give you a long list of songs of his that I wish I'd written. Long list. Him to name one of mine was major for this Beatles fan.
Yeah. He said when he wished that he had written, he said, "How dare he write that?" I love that. I think
he's allowed. He's allowed.
There's a band that went out at the top, and how few bands go out at their peak. Without mentioning any artists, do you ever look at artists and think to yourself, oh, they should have stopped years ago? As far as at the height of their
Yes, I do.
Of their bands?
I think it's very hard to leave a band after a certain point, because a band is like a teenage gang. It's like a street gang. You know, you don't want to be in a street gang for the rest of your life.
Right.
You can't mature. You can't explore. You have to be stuck with this regiment of 3 people, say.
Well, I think the idea of a rock group, you know, there was some sort of teenage gang in the beginning, and when the teenage gang reaches 30, you know, it's a big deal, and when it reaches 40, it's a bigger deal. When the teenage gang is 50 or 60, you know, ageism creeps in. You know, how can they be a teenage gang?
We're not talking about teenage gangs. We're talking about you. We're talking about
me.
Springsteen and Dylan and McCartney. You know, guys who are well past 50 and are still doing really good.
Well, we all feel pretty natural at what we do, but you know, there aren't many of us who survived it.
You watch with interest then as a band like the Stones, even as they go off and do their solo projects, ultimately they come back together, they hit 50, and they keep performing.
I think it's interesting to watch the Rolling Stones, see how they survive as a group. I don't think it's easy for the Rolling Stones to do what they do, but you know, people are nostalgic for those years, and so they go to see the Stones to remind themselves of what it was like. I'm not sure they go to see the Stones to see something new.
So no, we shouldn't mention anybody, but there's no way out for them now.
And do you think that they know that too? Do you have friends that
I
are...
have no idea.
Okay.
I know.
But of course you think that you...
You know, sometimes
And I'm not saying that the people, didn't mean to interrupt, that the people at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that I feel that way about any of them. I'm just saying that I thought about, when I was looking at the police on the wall there, that struck me.
But you know, people are, you know, I admire AC/DC, for example. I think what they do is fantastic. You know, the way they play together, the sound is fantastic. You always know what you're getting with an AC/DC record. It's the high quality, but you know what you're going to get.
You know what you're going to get.
So, yeah, but that's not me.